Good old DOSBox, where would we be without you? Probably sobbing over our old broken DOS 6.2 machine, screaming, "Why, damn it? Why can't I play Monkey Island just one more time?" Thankfully we have this, and services like Good Old Games that let us relive our wonderful childhoods, playing your favorite old games like Quest for Glory, and Space Quest, and Descent, and things like that. If DOSBox does have one great weakness, it's that its music replication kind of sucks. And that's because it emulates the old AdLib Yamaha OPL stuff from like the old Sound Blaster days, which doesn't sound all that great. There are much better options available, and what I'll do here is walk you through a few of them and give you some samples of how they sound compared to each other. We'll start out by looking at a few tweaks you can make in the DOSBox configuration file, which will give you some better overall sound, and then we'll dive into a few of the more specific options. We've got Ghoul Soft virtual MIDI synth and some sound fonts, MUNT for MT32 emulation, and then I have a third option for you, which borders on the ridiculous. We'll start things off with the DOSBox config. I'm not going to dive into too many details here because there is a ton of stuff you can play with in here. We'll just go over a couple of the quick options. So the first thing I like to change is just to modify this here. The rate on the mixer by default is 44/100. You can go all the way up to 49/716, which is what I'd recommend if you have a decent computer. I don't think you're really going to hear a huge amount of difference, but it's worth a shot. You'll find that same setting if you go further down here in the Sound Blaster setting, the Gravis Ultrasound, which we're not really going to use, and yeah, you can even change it for PC speaker. Probably a little overkill there. MIDI configuration is another section we're going to be messing with. Here you have basically the type, the MIDI device to use, which I always leave on default. And then MIDI config is which bank or which MIDI mixer we're going to use. And I'll show you how to get that here in just a minute when we play with the MUNT emulation, so that you can change it here and actually route all of your MIDI music through the proper device. At this point, DOSBox should be set up and ready to rock. Now all that's left is grabbing both the Ghoul Soft virtual MIDI synth and MUNT, getting those installed and configured. We'll start off with the virtual MIDI synth since it's so dang easy to set up. All these links will be available on the blog at kungfutreachery.net. You'll see a link below here on where to get to that, and I'll put it in the description as well. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and download Ghoul Soft virtual MIDI synth and install it. Once Ghoul Soft virtual MIDI synth is installed, you want to open the configurator and start tinkering with things. The first thing you need to do is add your sound fonts here. All you can do is push the plus button and then find the folder where they're located. I usually like to keep them all in one place so I can get at them real easily. The only ones I'd really recommend messing with is your AWE32, Gravis Ultrasound, and then the Weeds GM3. Now you'll notice they're all checked by default when you install them. We don't want that. What you want to do is actually uncheck everything but the one you want it to use, because what it'll do is when it loads up, it'll start at the top and work its way to the bottom, loading each sound set in succession. It does that so if you have custom instruments or your own custom sound fonts, you can stick them at the bottom of the chain here and then replace instruments in the sound font above it, which is kind of cool, but not something we're going to mess with here. The other thing you want to check is hit MIDI Mapper. And you want to make sure this is listed as a Ghoul Soft virtual MIDI synth. Since we're on Windows 98, Windows 8, we don't have that option, so you can ignore it. But Windows 7 and below, you will have to check that. You also want to make sure it's set as the default down here. The only other thing I like to mess with is hitting the Options tab, and then you can adjust your reverb and chorus levels. I do like to crank the reverb up a little bit. Seems to sound more like a genuine AWE32 if it's set at about 90 or so. The next thing we need to install is MUNT, which is the MT32 Emulation project. This is actually a really good way to get MT32 sound without dropping like $200 and purchasing an actual unit and then trying to mess around with getting it to work on your modern system. The setup for this, again, is pretty straightforward. You can get the files from SourceForge. This is an older version at 1.5. There are newer ones available on GitHub, but this is what I would start out with and then maybe upgrade it later as you get more comfortable with it. Roland is pretty hardcore about protecting the software for the MT32, so unfortunately I won't be able to provide the ROMs for you. You could find a friend that has an MT32, or maybe ask Uncle Google and see what he has to say about some of those file names. Once MUNT is installed and the ROMs are copied into its program folder, we just have a couple more steps to do and we're ready to go. The first you have to do is hit Options and ROM Configuration, and then pick which version of the ROMs we're going to want to run. Personally, I prefer the MT32 control, the 1988, with the MT32 PCM. This is going to be most accurate for like your Sierra or Lucas games. That's what they were originally programmed with in mind. The CM32L has a few more code sets or control sets, that kind of thing, and it'll work better for some newer titles. So you might have to switch between them and just kind of see what sounds best, but start out with the MT32. Open your DOSBox config again and go down to the MIDI section and look for this line right here, MIDI config. What we need to do is we need to find the number we need to put in here to switch to MUNT instead of using virtual MIDI synth. So to do that, just fire up DOSBox again, type in mixer/list MIDI, and then find the number that's associated with the MT32 synth emulator. So that's number 1 in our case here. Go back to your DOSBox config, enter that number here, save it, and that's it. You're switched over to using MUNT over the virtual MIDI synth. You'll know MUNT is configured and running properly when you see the display light up and stuff starts blinking away here. At this point, we're pretty much done. You might have to go in and change like DOSBox configs if you want to switch back to virtual MIDI synth for a game. But beyond that, you really just got to make sure that MUNT is running when you want to do MT32 stuff, and you'll have some pretty sick tunes to go along with the games. What I'll do now is start up Monkey Island 2 and Descent, and then we'll run them using the different sound fonts. We'll also include the DOSBox and Windows General MIDI just so you can get an idea of what we're upgrading from. First I gotta show you this though, this is kind of fun. You can always separate an OG DOS gamer from the posers when they've got a few of these wheels laying around. Such a pain in the butt, I don't think these ever stopped anybody from copying a game. In any case, we're stuck with it, so let's do it here. We need the recipe for trench mouth. Let's see, it looks like we need 28 dead cats and 22 wads of pre-chewed gum. Now we can start our comparisons. We'll start with the default DOSBox music replication, move on to Windows General MIDI, and then from there we'll just burn through all of the different card options and MUNT so you can see how they sound with both Monkey Island 2 and Descent. That wraps up our comparison of the different music options for DOSBox. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Some options definitely sound better than others for certain games, so feel free to experiment and see what sounds best to you. I'll have links to virtual MIDI synth, MUNT, and my favorite sound fonts available at kungfutreachery.net. The link that'll get you directly there is down in the description below. There's also a link to a bonus video that has me doing the same comparison using some of the music from Descent. Please subscribe if you see what you like, and we'll get some more videos posted shortly. As always, take care, and enjoy a full rendition of that Monkey Island 2 music running through the MT32 emulation.